Hi, welcome to the Temple Institute. My name is Steve Frankel. As you can hear from my accent, I'm from New York. I moved to Israel about 40 years ago. From New York, I'm now working in the Temple Institute, and I'm glad you could come to visit. Why don't we come inside and we can talk a little bit about what we do here. If you walk this way, the Temple Institute is not a museum. We don't have a lot of old things here. In fact, the oldest thing that you're going to see here today from the Temple Institute is probably going to be me. But what we do is that we prepare ourselves for the next stage, because the Jewish people have been praying for the temple for 1,944 and a half years. And we want to say that not only did we pray and cry about the temple, but we also did what we could in order to be ready for the event of the rebuilding of the temple whenever it happens. Only God knows when that will be, but we want to say that we were prepared for it. What we do is we do a lot of research, we do teaching, and we also replicate the tools and the vessels and the garments of the holy service. Hopefully we'll be able to see some of that today. What I want to do first is I want to study the structure of the temple from this model that we have here. I know that you saw the place where the temple was built. Now we can see what the temple looked like. In front of you is a model of the temple. It was the last evolution of the second temple built by Herod at the end of the 1st century BCE. We'll talk about 3 sections of the temple. First of all, the temple is set out from east to west. When we start on the eastern wall, we'll talk about this section right over here. This section over here is called the women's courtyard. Now, usually when we talk about Orthodox shuls and we talk or synagogues, and we want to talk about the women's courtyard, we think right away that this is the place where the women went when the men went somewhere else to pray. That's not the way it was in the temple. In the temple, the women's courtyard was called the women's courtyard because of an event that took place once a year for 1 week. In general, the women's courtyard was a place where people prepared themselves to go to the more holy sections of the temple, because as we get further west, we get holier and holier. The section in the women's courtyard, there'll be the wine will be stored there, and the oil, and the wood for the service, and there would be a courtyard to settle all civil disputes before you go in, so you can go in with a full heart to serve God. The one event that happened during the year in the women's courtyard that may be called the women's courtyard was during the week of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, when there was a 7-day festival, day and night, 24 hours a day. The Levites would come out to these semicircle steps that you see in front of you. They would play the music 24/7. They would bring in gigantic light poles, and there'd be dancing and singing and merriment, juggling of fire. And for that 1 week, the women were asked to come sit on balconies on top, and the men were dancing on the bottom. Otherwise, women had equal responsibilities and equal obligations, privileges in the temple. Now, as we go through the middle gate, we'll come to this area over here called the main courtyard. In the main courtyard, this is where the action is. If you came to visit the temple, you would be coming to this area over here. Here is where the sacrifices are brought. Here is where the Levites play their music every day. And here is where the priests will bless the community after doing the service twice a day. In the courtyard, you can see there's a big altar, and there's a little copper wash basin. in the corner. Then we get into the building itself. Again, as we go further and further, we get more holy. So when we come first to this, on the top you see like a rectangle. That's like an entrance hall. You can see a gigantic doorway. There's no door there, so everyone can see inside as the priests prepare themselves for going into the more holy section. When you get into the back where the more holy section is, this is a place where there's a door and only priests will go in there. And there'll be the golden vessels, and there'll be the holy and the holy of holies. When you get to the back room, the holy of holies, this is the place that the Dome of the Rock is built over, and this is the holiest place in the world. In this place, only one person is allowed to enter, the high priest, and he's only allowed to enter one day a year, the day of Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. In our exhibition here, we've had set up 2 different rooms. One room, the next room we'll go to, will depict the courtyard with the altar, and the next one will depict the sanctuary inside the Holy and the Holy of Holies. When we get to the other rooms, we'll see what went on there, who would be there, and what would go on. So if we can start moving in the direction. Before we go, I just want to show you our showcase over here, because as we know, the temple was a multi-sensual experience. You would hear music, you would smell incense, you would see the sights. So when you hear the music, these are the musical instruments that were played. You can see over here a lyre or a harp. This would be typically what King David was associated with. You can see over here the small horns. We see in the back something that's familiar to everyone who's used to Jewish rituals. You can see a shofar or a ram's horn. We associate that with Rosh Hashanah or the New Year, but in the temple it was used every day. We also have 2 larger harps with 22 strings, and we have the large horns, made out of silver that were played every day. Okay, now let's see if we can come inside. We'll go into the next room. Come with me. And if you can see, this room, as you enter, is supposed to depict the main courtyard of the temple. You can see the altar, we can see the wash basin. Let's talk about that in details. The first thing I want to do is introduce you to a friend of mine. This man is called Mr. Cohn. Mr. Cohn, of course, is called Mr. Cohn because Cohen is the name of the priestly family. If you know someone whose name is Cohen, that person can probably trace his ancestry back to Aaron, the brother of Moses. The Cohen is wearing exactly what he needs to wear. He has a hat on. He has the robe on the outside. He has a pair of pants that we don't see, and he has this belt. This belt is very special. It's 16 yards long, which means that when the priest gets dressed in the morning, he needs his friend to help him. He'll spin around, and his friend will hold the belt until we're finished, and then he would tie it up. Maybe what's more interesting than what he is wearing is what he's not wearing, because he's not allowed to wear anything else other than what I mentioned, which means that those of you who know, 3 weeks ago on Friday, we had 5 inches of snow. And this high priest would come out at the crack of dawn, and he would start his work. If you notice, he doesn't have any shoes on. The floor of the temple is made out of marble. You can imagine, he has no undershirt on, he has no jacket on. You can imagine what it would be like starting service like that. We promised the priest that it would be a holy experience. We didn't say it was going to be comfortable. Over here we have the high priest. there's one high priest in the temple at any one time. He's elected or appointed for life, depending on the period of history that we're talking about. He's wearing the same articles of clothing as the regular priest. He just has 4 additional articles of clothing. He's wearing the blue robe on the outside. On the bottom of the blue robe, you can see bells and pom-poms. There are 72 of them. 72 is the amount of letters in God's full name. That's the significance. It's a name that only He would know and only He would use in the service. He's also wearing a vest. On top of the vest, he has the breastplate. The breastplate, it has 12 precious stones, and every one of the precious stones has engraved on it one of the names of the tribes of Israel. What's interesting to note is that the upper right-hand stone is a red stone. Engraved on that is the name of Jacob's firstborn son. His firstborn son was Reuben. This red stone, named after Reuben, today is known as a ruby. The name ruby has kept itself throughout the ages. The next thing I want to point out is his crown on his head. This is a very special crown. This crown is different than all the other crowns in the world, because a crown usually is made to show people how important the person wearing the crown is. But this crown serves as a sign. It's written on it in Hebrew, Kodesh Lashem, means sanctified to God. The message behind this is, don't mistake me for a God. Don't pray to me. I can pray with you, I can pray for you, but I am not a God and I don't answer prayers. That was a very important idea in the Jewish temple. Let's move over here now and we can talk about the altar. This altar here is the smallest regulation altar there could be. In the Second Temple, the altar was 3.5 stories high, and it was a square of 16 meters on each side. This clearly is not that. But what this is, like I said, is the minimum requirements of an altar. It also has a ramp as required. It's square, has cornerstones. It has a flat surface on top. And it has a foundation stone on the bottom. And now we can move over to the next vessel, which is the wash basin. The wash basin over here is the most undescribed of all the vessels in the temple. In the scriptures, it just mentions that it has to be made out of, in Hebrew it says nechoshet, it means bronze or copper. It needs to hold water, we know that, because it's a wash basin. It needs to have at least 2 faucets because it uses the plural in the scriptures. Other than that, we don't know how it's supposed to look. We can make it any way we want. When it's made the first time by Moses in the desert for the tabernacle, it's a small vessel because there are only 5 priests in the entire world. When we get to the Second Temple, we're talking about up to 500 priests in the temple at any one time. So we needed a much larger wash basin. This wash basin, if you can see, will be fitted, each one of these holes will be fitted to look like this. On the top here is a vessel that has as much water necessary to wash one hand and one foot, and it would be filled up with water, and then when it's turned, the water will come out, and the priests here, up to 12 priests at a time, will be able to wash their hands and feet, which they need to do before they start the service. We added in our wash basin here, a little modern technology. Thinking about the priest coming out in the snow, walking on the marble floors and barefoot, we decided here to put in a heating element so that Mr. Cohn, when he comes out in the morning, will be able to have warmer water and not ice water to put on his hands and feet. Before we go into the next room, I would like to talk to you about this ornament over here. This ornament over here is called the candelabra of Helena. Helena is a mother of a king that comes to visit the temple from a far off land. And she knows the rules in the temple, and this is what she sees. She sees something that bothers her. I mentioned before that the priest starts at the crack of dawn. The only way that you know when the crack of dawn is, in those days, since you don't have a watch, is that you have to see the crack of dawn. In order to see it, you have to be facing east. I told you before that the model, that the temple was set out from east to west, the west being a more holy area. One of the regulations is you're not allowed to turn your back ever on the west. Helena comes and she sees that right before sunrise, everyone is so excited about starting the service that she notices that everyone is facing the east. Everyone is facing the east, the back is to the west, and that's a problem for her. So she goes home and she talks to her advisors, and then she brings this candelabra, described in the Talmud, looking like a flower, made out of solid gold, with a ball in the middle, but I hope you can see right here, there's a crystal. When you see the crystal? The crystal is hanging here. Now they hung this up right in front of the door to the sanctuary. They opened up the big doors in the back towards the east. They aligned the crystal so that when the sunrise, the first rays of the sun, would reflect off the crystal and light up the whole courtyard. Our picture, if we can see the picture over there. The picture will show us how it would look. Now, we're told in the Talmud that since Helena solved the problem of people looking in the wrong direction, that she was going to be remembered all through the ages for her donation to the temple. And every time I say that, I think to myself, how did the people in the Talmud know that we were going to be here almost 2,000 years later talking about Helena and her minor contribution to the temple? I'd like to move into the next room. The next room will depict the sanctuary. The sanctuary is a place that only the priest would be able to see.
Tell them if I have some questions. Okay.
Oh, if at any point, if anyone has questions would like to ask, please feel free to ask. I'd love to answer your questions. We come into this room, and here we're going to look at first two pictures. This picture over here will depict what the sanctuary would look like in the first temple. We can see that there's a wall, we can see there's a door frame, we can see there's a curtain. We can see that there's not only one menorah, but Solomon, the richest man in the world, adds another 10. Also, showbread case, Solomon adds another 10. And there's one golden altar where the incense will be brought. If we can come over and see this next picture. This is a picture of what the same room would look like in the second temple. First of all, there's one menorah and one showbread case. That's the regulation. That's what they could afford. That was fine. If you look in the back has just a curtain. No wall and no door frame. The reason for this is that this room was twice as tall as the room in the first temple. So they didn't know how to make a wall so high that would keep the same floor space on the floor, that wouldn't have to have a larger base. They didn't want to disturb the floor plan, so they took a curtain from the top. They then had empty space, and then they put another curtain in. So they created a virtual wall based on 2 curtains and empty space that was the exact same width as the wall in the first temple. Now I want to talk about the golden altar. The golden altar is where the incense is brought. The incense are 11 ingredients. They're ground together in one big operation at the beginning of the year. They make 368 portions, 365 for every day of the year, and 3 for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, where they need more. Every day, the priest would go up on top of the altar. There'd be a fire there. He'd take a shovel full of coal, and he would lay it out on the golden altar. Then he would be given the mixture of incense for that day, and he would put that on the coals, and it would fire up, and it would fill not only the whole sanctuary and the whole temple, but the whole of Jerusalem would smell like the incense. Now we can go over to the showbread. This is the showbread. This is what it would look like. This is the showbread case. The showbread are 12 loaves of bread. They're baked on Friday afternoon. They're put out in the hallway right outside the sanctuary until Saturday afternoon. And Saturday afternoon they're brought in, and the old bread will be replaced by the new bread. Now it's very important that there are always 12 loaves of bread on the table. That means that they don't take off the old bread and put on the new bread, but what they do is that they push off the old bread with the new bread. Now I want to show you something here. There's a vision that we're supposed to see from this table. If you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of these shelves have 3 rods going across. And the 2 shelves on top have 2 rods going across. And I mentioned that they're always filled with bread. The message we're supposed to get from God is this message. We're supposed to see 2 hands, because we have 3 joints on our fingers, like the 3 rods on the shelves, 2 joints on our thumb, and as I mentioned, it's always filled with bread. This is a message from God that He's in charge of the sustenance of the world, and He has our backs, and He's taking care of us. From the physical world, I want to take you over to the other side, to the spiritual world represented by the light of the menorah. Now, this menorah is not the real menorah. Did you see? I'm not sure. Did you see the menorah outside? So you saw the other one. That's the real one. The real one has 97 pounds of solid gold. It weighs half a ton, and it's worth today about $2.5 million. Where you saw it outside, it's in a position to light up the Temple Mount. That's where we want it to be. For here, all we did was we set up from the same mold we casted, made out of polyethylene, the same size, the same shape. If it was in the temple, it wouldn't be parallel to the wall, it would be perpendicular to the wall. And you can see that the lamps on top face the middle, and the one in the middle, which would be standing here, would be facing further west. I want to show you this is what the lamp looks like. We can see here that there's room for the olive oil, and there's room here for the wick. They'd fill it up and they would light it. The wicks were made out of the clothes of the priest. When they got dirty, torn, out of size, they would be able to use that one more time in the Holy Service. And now I want to come over to this. If you can see in back of me, you can see that there's a wall and a door frame and a curtain. And as we saw in the pictures, wall, door frame, curtain is from the first temple, because I want to talk about the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was in the first temple. It was put in by Solomon, and it stayed there for 370 years. Every year during those 370 years, the high priest would go in and he would do the service as mentioned in the book of Leviticus. The scene would look like this picture over here. You can see from the picture that it's a very intimate kind of experience. Firstly, the priest is the only person in the entire sanctuary. They clear out the sanctuary when he goes in. You can see that the two poles, they actually touch the curtain from the inside. So the high priest is standing in between two poles and the curtain, and in front of him is the Spirit of God. Notice also what he's wearing. In the last room we saw that the high priest looked almost like a king. And here the high priest is dressed just in white. Even his belt doesn't have the color that a regular priest would have. The message, of course, that we get from this is if you have one opportunity to pray for the well-being of the world, don't try to impress God with your clothes. You have to come in with a lot more than that. Your own virtue, the virtue of the people who sent you, and you have to rely on God's mercy. The last 37 years before the end of the first temple, 37 years before the end of the first temple, the king's name was Josiah. He was told that it's time to put the Ark of the Covenant away in a hiding place that Solomon built many years before that. That's where it's put, and that's where we believe that it remains until today. The entire time of the second temple, when the high priest went in, he would go in on Yom Kippur, he would dress the same way, he would do the same service, but he would imagine only that the Ark of the Covenant was there with him. We wanted to help you with your imagination, so we decided to make a model. This is the model of the Ark of the Covenant. It is the size that it needs to be, except for the poles that stick out. They would stick out a lot more. We didn't have room here. And just to make it clear, this is made out of wood. It's not made out of gold, because we have no intention to making a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. We believe that the time will come and we will find the original and be able to put it where it belongs to be. Any questions? If there are no questions, take a closer look.
Thank you very much.
And
So how is it for you to guide in such a holy place? People come a long way to Jerusalem. Life expectation one day to come to Jerusalem, discover the city, discover the temple. And they meet you and you live among these holy.
They say that now that we don't have the Holy Temple, they say that learning about it and teaching about it is like building it. So I feel that every day I come to work, I'm building the Holy Temple.
So we really thank you. The builder of the temple.
Just one. I just work here.
The temple. We are so happy to meet you here today. We will continue with our guests. Visit Jerusalem after sunset, walking through the renovated neighborhood, discover some rooms, listen to some music, and we will leave you for today.
Okay, thank you very
so
much.
My pleasure. It was excellent.
Thank you. Merci.
Even more look. Building the temple. חנות. חנות? What would you think about little shopping? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So when you'll be back to Jerusalem, and you'll see here everything about the temple, including 3D map. You can understand the topography of the Holy Land. And you have some interesting books which can show you Israel then, in the past, and today. And why not choose Jerusalem, Jerusalem temple. This is where we stood, as you remember, a few minutes ago. And here is what we would have seen if we'd be here 1900 years ago. The transparent section of this picture shows you what is the original stone here. You manage with this? We thank you very much for your hospitality.
It was my pleasure.
The builder of the temple.
הזמנתי איזה 50 אנשים.
לבית קפה?
כן. לא, אף אחד לא.
עושים במרקע?
להתראות. תודה רבה. She's bringing the soup. We walk in narrow accesses in the old city in order to see where the people live. Several questions were sent to us. People asking about how is life within the Jewish quarter. You can live where the tourists walk, but you can live off the main road, a beautiful life in quiet areas. And we have here teachers, doctors, rabbis as well, artists, painters, sculptors, musicians. This is Jerusalem. Sunrise in America, sunset in Israel. Night is now showing up. You probably remember, as I was telling you, about this Jewish quarter destroyed by Jordan. Amazingly, the Jordanian did not touch one public building in the city of Jerusalem. And here it is. This is the old Rothschild's home. The Rothschild's home was built by the Rothschild bankers family. A global networking of banks in the 19th century started in Germany, moved to Russia, England, France, Russia. And this Jewish family donated a home for the elderly, for the Jewish old people in Jerusalem. No one could take care of them. They had no family, so they were here, nurses, doctors, to take care of them. And amazingly, the Jordanian never hit that building, they never destroyed it, they never identified this building with a Jewish institute. As hospitals and daycare centers, home for elderlies were good for the global population of Jerusalem. And next to this beautiful building is one of the royal court in the Temple Mount. And we found one of these pillars from the royal corridor. You can notice that two pieces of that column disappear. So this is not the true height. It was twice higher than what it is today. But this is from Temple time. How did it move to here? Who knows? But listen, we have the bottom, we have the top of it. It was a bit conic, as you can see, so this section seems to be a bit narrower. And the old elderly home, Rothschild, is today used as a yeshiva. We have plenty of modern places to take care for our third age population in Jerusalem. And I'd like to walk with you in one of these very, very nice, very scenic old streets, which is probably the only one remaining the way it has been all over the history, as if no war ever occurred here. We have to pay a tribute to these people from the Jewish community of the old city of Jerusalem who were killed here in the old city of Jerusalem during the War of Independence. The Jordanians left their bodies here in a common grave. And after the 6 Days War, 1967, we have moved this body in a major ceremony on the central graveyard in Mount of Olives. And we have to pay tribute to these people. They gave their life so we be able to be here today together in the reunified Jerusalem.
כולנו ישמחה, כולנו עלילה, את הכל, את הכל, את הכל, כולנו
ancient street, the way it was. Look at the door gate. You can see here the Star of David, ancient doors. Okay. Here, ancient gates, artists renovated this. You can see the ancient Star of David. The mezuzah is covered within. Here it appears, the mezuzah, a blessed parchment, reminding us that God is one. Among the 65 synagogues, we have rebuilt 6 synagogues. This is the door gate entrance to the Istanbuli synagogue. Istanbuli synagogue was the most important one in the Turkish time. This was the community originally from Istanbul, capital city of Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. Look at this beautiful mezuzah. The mezuzah, which carries the parchment on which it is said, God is one. And when we enter the home, we bless, we kiss the mezuzah as a reminder that we believe in one God, and the mezuzah is protecting the house. This is winter in Jerusalem. So if we're lucky, we can see some oranges on this tree in the middle of the neighborhood. An orange tree surrounded. You can see these beautiful oranges. People did not pick them because this is called khushkhash. This is the kind of oranges we don't eat. This is a strong tree which is the base to support edible fruits. But here the idea was just to have a nice citrus tree no one will touch. Pay attention to the next door there. This is the door of the synagogue, Prophet Elijah synagogue, and here was living famous Rabbi Getz. Rabbi Getz was the head of the Bet El congregation, the one who studied the Zohar, this secret book of splendor, the base of Kabbalistic movement, the Kabbalah. Do we have questions? Questions? What is the blue covered walkway going into the wall? This is an access which is enabling us to go from the Temple Mount down to the Western Wall, or from the Western Wall to the Temple Mount, from the bottom to the top. Other questions? Are all of the street signs in Hebrew, English and Arabic? Yes. We'll show it. Yes, absolutely. 3 languages. English is not compulsory, but Hebrew and Arabic are the 2 official languages of Israel. I'm still waiting for more questions. We still have a few minutes together, 12 minutes. So let's keep the next 10 minutes for questions so we'll have time to answer. You see a street sign? The Bet El Road. You remember we mentioned Rabbi Getz and this famous yeshiva. I'll show you the entrance and you see the sign. Israel, Jerusalem, is a land of tolerance. And of course, the sign languages is connected with the population living in the city. Hebrew, Arabic, and English. This is the famous Bet El synagogue, the house of God. These are the Kabbalistic movement, yeshiva, and here is their door gate. You can see here the gates of Jerusalem are represented: the Zion gate, the Flowers gate, the Lion's gate, the Dung gate, the Jaffa gate, and the Nablus gate. ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים. Our eyes will pray towards Jerusalem for mercy. And here you can see this splendid building, outstanding. The famous Churva synagogue, we saw the building, it's been destroyed. This is the Churva synagogue, a huge building. And this place was destroyed by Arabs twice. They even built a mosque over the synagogue location. And we have rebuilt this synagogue, and people use it and pray there, and you can come and visit. And I really hope, if you can, if you enjoy this broadcast, next step will be come to Jerusalem on a Bnei Brit tour and come visit our beautiful city, your beautiful city.
קצת רקע על חורבה.
זה לא הספיריט של היום. תראה, בטח. כשסיכמנו אז אנחנו עושים טיול של להכיר את המקומות, ואחרי זה אפשר לעשות בעומק. You see, Alan, what a way. We have been a long way. When we came back to Jerusalem in 1967 and we found this place totally destroyed, we were so happy to be back at the Kotel, at the Western Wall. But on the other hand, 1/3 of Jerusalem population was born in the old days in the old city of Jerusalem. And think about these guys. What was it to come back to a city they grew in and they found everything totally destroyed? And after 20 years of intense digging, archaeological digging, and rebuilding the city of Jerusalem, we are back to life between heaven and past. This is the ancient Cardo Street we saw partially before, and we discovered that street in an open air section, and you came on a wonderful time when the music winter festival occurred in Jerusalem. So the musicians are now on the stage, they prepare themselves, and the show will start in the coming hour. And each and every day,
Musicians come from different origins. Because Jerusalem, as you know, has seen visitors and invaders from literally all over the world. Mongols, Indian, Persian, Babylonian, Mesopotamian, Turks, European, English, British, Spaniards, French, German, Egyptian, name it. We have had people from all over the world coming to enjoy the spirit of this holy city. I'll let you enjoy the views. We walk around the Jewish quarter and still be happy to answer to some of your questions. A bride. You want to see the bride? There's a wedding. Is it a real wedding? Come have a look. A begging bride.
I haven't walked out anything. Are you serious? I haven't seen this
And she's collecting money for people, young couple. They're going to marry very, very soon. Attends, on a répondu ça. Attends. Comment ça fait? Hein?
זה לא יהיה, זה לא משנה. אבל זה חזק. זה לא יהיה, אמרתי לך משהו. אבל זה חזק. זה לא יהיה, מה שאתה לא תגיד. תבוא אליי. איך אני אעשה את זה? אני בעצמך אעשה את ככה למעלה. אני בא לקחת לעשות. בסדר עכשיו,
שהיא גרה באזור כאילו?
Может, конечно, пройти так, а потом спуститься вниз.
חיילים? חובלים.
So you're this walk then. Do you mind if you walk back and just finishing up?
So yeah, please. So no problem.
Okay, yeah.
I think I need to get to Sandy anyway.
Oh, okay. Let me speak to Daryl about that, okay? Just to confirm. We'll get a minute.
We walk and listen to the tunes. in front of this beautiful musical festival in Jerusalem. Happy to host you here. It was a pleasure taking you around for the last 3 hours. It's been a real threat, and I'm looking forward to have you joining us on the next tour on next Thursday. Next week on Wednesday, your time. Shalom from Jerusalem, my pleasure.